but
Oh.
I had my TD, and of course, everybody there was driving either a hotted up 50s cars or like bucket tees and things like that. I was the only British car there, and it kind of put you. They were fascinated. They'd all seen hot rods before. They hadn't seen MGs before.
Yeah. Well, my third car was a 55 Chevy Bel Air.
Oh, nice.
That's my third car.
Yeah,
I sold that to buy a wedding ring for my wife.
I got you.
Boy, I wish I had that car back.
I was going to say, big mistake.
I saw one. It was a 55.
It was the right decision at the time.
Yeah.
Hey, John, how are you?
Hey, pretty good.
Okay.
There's a red and white 55 Chevrolet down in Greer that looks absolutely immaculate. So if you want to relive your youth, let me know. I'll go out, send me a check, and I'll buy it for you.
And you'll buy it for me. I don't think my wife will let me do that.
She's not going to give back the ring either.
No.
When I first got, my first car I ever bought was a 1930 Model A Ford. And when my wife and I got married, we had nothing. We were sleeping on a FeatherTech. We had some pots and pans, no furniture, no bed, no nothing. And my brother-in-law had my Model A over at his place, and he had lime stored in it, and I wanted to get rid of it. And one of the garages came open for the apartment that we were staying in. And I think it was like either $2.50 more per month or $12.50 more per month for the rent. And I got the garage and I put the Model A in there, and oh, my wife was mad. Oh, we had one of the biggest arguments in our nice newlywed that we had. But I told her, I said, the Model A was there before you, and it's going to stay a lot longer than you. And it's been 52 years, and I've got the wife, and I've had the car now for probably about 60.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
good.
Oh, good. John's got his hat. We're ready to go.
Almost.
I'm gonna get me a piece of paper.
Cheers, John.
Cheers. Hey, did any of you guys watch the funeral today?
I saw the coronation, and I figured that's about as much royalty as I can stand.
Oh, man, I tell you what, that was something else. All those people.
Yeah.
It seems like the whole UK turned out for it.
Probably did.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing, I'm glad I wasn't the pallbearer. You know how much that coffin weighed?
Oh, God. And you got to walk real slow, and you got to walk a real long way.
Yeah, but do you know how much that coffin weighed?
No idea.
They're a lead line.
Yep.
The coffin was over 500 pounds in weight. That's just the coffin. That's not the queen in there.
Well, she probably didn't add another 90 pounds to it.
Yeah, probably. She was a good woman.
She was. I think she was. She was quite active during World War II, before she became queen.
Well, you figured the day before she died, she met with the new prime minister.
Yeah.
That's dedication.
Yeah, she's probably a pretty cool woman. I just don't know if that tradition is going to last in this modern age.
It's
no.
lasted a long time so far. So, it's just, chances are it's going to last a long time hence, as long as they keep their wits about them. I mean, oh my gosh. Well, it's 7 o'clock. It's time to get going. We got 61 people on, but hey, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. We got 61 right now. So we'll start off. So this is the first Zoom in a month, since the 22nd of August, which was our last one. So I got all kinds of news and notes to go over. tonight. I'm wearing Glenn's MG t-shirt. See there, there's Glenn's MG service, and then it's on the back. So I visited there last February and got the MG shirt. So I don't wear it to work, but I couldn't find the University Motors one real quickly tonight, so I've got Glenn's on. So throughout the summer, I've been talking about how close YouTube has been getting to all the videos on my channel. I've been getting to the 10 million mark. And tonight, I'm like 4,089 views away from 10 million views. I'm sure that there aren't any lights that go off, or they're not going to send me a check or anything, you know, for hitting that goal. But my gosh, that's a lot of views. So I want to thank everybody for you know, tuning into YouTube on occasion and watching some of those videos. So I'm sometime in the next couple of weeks, I would think probably even sooner, it's gonna click over. And there's 24,000 subscribers. So geez, you know, all I gotta do is start making some new videos and I can get those numbers to rush upwards. But I haven't made any new videos. The constant contact email that I sent out that everybody got, I sent out 5,700 of those, and I still had a 50% open rate, which means the people who never open them didn't open it, and everybody who does opened it, because my open rate is usually somewhere between 53% or something. But you know, that's really nice. Right after our Zoom seminar last month, I went to Altoona, PA, to the Central Pennsylvania British Car Fest. I think maybe it was their 28th one, and I've been to, I don't know, I've been to a lot of them. I've been to 20 of them. I don't know, some enormous number. And it's always a lot of fun. Jim and Lori Pastor put on just a great event, and there were around 100 cars there from all over central Pennsylvania. I don't know if anywhere from out of state or not me. I was driving my Chevy Equinox, because we always do a technical seminar the first 2 days. So we do that on a Thursday, Friday, and then the show is a Saturday, Sunday. But anyway, there's a nice show. This next weekend, I'm going to the 40th anniversary of the Emerald Necklace MG Register. So the Emerald Necklace is a series of municipal parks surrounding Cleveland. Each park then making up one emerald of the necklace. So Craig Peck and his former wife Sue were real excited about starting that in 1980. Must have been later than that, I guess, if it's their 40th anniversary. I guess it was 82. But Craig, who's the founder, called me a couple of weeks ago, and he said, I just want to thank you for encouraging me to start the club. And I said, well, I didn't so much encourage you as I asked you to continue. He'd put up some posters and for an inaugural meeting, and no one came. And he's kind of defeated. And I said, no, just persist, dude, just persist, it'll work. And now it's been a long running, well-organized club in the greater Cleveland area. So anyway, I'm going down to that. And then 2 weeks after that, I'm going to on the 9th of October, going to the Hunt Country Classic in Marshall, Virginia. You can get information about that from the, I hope I had that up on the website. The Hunt Country Classic, through the Washington, D.C. MG Car Club. And then the weekend after that, also in Alexandria, Virginia, same general area, I'm going to be assembling an engine at Sean English's house. I don't know how many people he's got signed up so far, but if you're interested, I've got his email address in there. Sean might be on tonight too. If you're on, Sean, you can break in and say hello, or if I can remember, I'll call it up again. And he can tell us how to get in touch with him. I was reluctant to put his phone number in there. And then the weekend after that, 22, 23, I'm going to be in South Carolina, Judd, at Carl Ware's home shop, and doing a gearbox rebuild to show people how to do a gearbox. So I've got a lot of stuff going.
What town is that in, John?
What's that?
What town in South Carolina? Do you know?
Hollywood.
Hollywood. Oh, that's down on the coast,
Okay.
I think.
I haven't even looked at the map yet, you
I
know?
understand. I'll look it up. You go ahead.
Okay. So anyway, and I want to shout out to Simon Dix, who monitors my website for me. And every time there's an advertisement for a male enhancement supplement, which the link apparently doesn't go anywhere. But anyway, Marty Bradley, my administrative assistant, and I are working on the website. We're going to be working on it tomorrow morning and trying to get it up and refreshed and new and positive and really nice. This past week, last week, Monday, I was in Toronto. I drove my daughter from Grand Rapids, where she attended a wedding. She lives in Los Angeles. She's the one I built the MGB GT for over the course of a year, year and a half ago. She came to town and convinced me to drive her to Toronto rather than fly all day. So I drove up there and I stayed with Alan Vinegar, the retired dentist in Richmond, on the north side of Toronto in the GTA. And Alan has an MGC. He's got a little business that he makes little things off his printer, his 3D printer. I really never stood and watched one, but it's a glue gun on steroids, you know, that just follows the path. It's just unbelievable. So he's made some little interesting devices for GTs and or MGCs. While we stayed there, we went to visit David West. His Arnold was in the picture that I sent out on that constant contact. And he's got a library, which is really, really fascinating. He's got nothing unique. How can you have a book that's unique? But he does have one book that's one of two in the way it's presented as a boxed book. But he's got some really tremendous stuff. And a bunch of nice cars. So I've got this mute button. I'm going to use it. It's not because I don't like you, but it's because I'm speaker. Here we go. So so I can get rid of the background noises. Then we went to visit Bob Gurneau. Bob's got 6 pre-war cars, something like that. He's a pre-war guy, absolutely, and a real T-type expert. So we had a good time doing that. And then we went to the MG Car Club meeting Tuesday night at a Danish Lutheran church. The whole thing set up by their club president, Johan Peterson, who's just in the hospital. Hope the news is good. The next day I left and went up to visit Norm and Valerie Jones in Colborne. Norm has 2 MGs, and we were tuning up one day and working on, I don't remember what we did on the other one the next day, probably some more tuning. Last year, when I went on my month tour through Eastern United States, Virginia and so forth, I came back missing 2 Snap-on 3/8 drive ratchets and 1 Snap-on brass hammer. So it's, you always lose tools with T's, Anyway, Norm gave me a brass hammer, which is like really period. It's so nice. It's got a nice balance to it. And anyway, so that's tremendous. I had a good time up there. Except that I go to the gym. I go to the gym, and every month the gym that I go to has a contest, and it might be putting a rope around a sled and putting 250 pounds on the sled, trying to drag it from one end of the building to the other with somebody with a stopwatch. And so I don't do very well in that stuff because most everybody's a lot younger. Although 2 or 3 years ago in September, I did a plank. You know, holding your back straight and supporting yourself on your toes and your elbows. I did a plank for 6 minutes and 2 seconds, which didn't even come in close to being a high score in this gym, because you got these 24-year-old girls that are 115 pounds and they're holding a plank for 18 minutes. But in the over 70 category, I did really well. This month, September, the challenge isn't doing something, it's not doing something, and it's not drinking. So foolishly, I put my name up on the board. This morning, there were at least 20 the names lined out, people who'd already failed. And so here I'm in Canada, everybody wants to, try this beer, try that beer. And I go, oh, I can't. But as soon as the 1st of October comes, I'll make up for it. I want to say a comment about the British Sports Car Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is ready to start considering nominations for 2023, but they need names. So I encourage you, if you've got someone that you know of who you think deserves, a high recognition from their involvement with British sports cars, but probably in this case, mostly MGs. We're up to 112 people so far. It's not a big night so far. The British Sports Car Hall of Fame is a place where people can be and are recognized. Their website's easy, British Sports Car Hall of Fame. You can go on there. It's like putting the name. Maybe you've got someone who's been your club newsletter chairman, or somebody who's organized events year after year after year, relatively unsung heroes, and put names down. Put those names down, because I'm eager to get more people from the MG world inducted into the British Sports Car Hall of Fame. This morning, almost a wake up, Guy St. John called me from Ann Arbor, Michigan. He's a couple years older than I am. He's still working every day. And he said, I just got to tell you about this deal that he said, I had a midget come in, and he said, he was out test driving it. Of course, it runs out of gas, right? It's like, geez, if you're going to take your car into a shop, at least leave enough gas in there. Anyway, he said he got looking at it, and since it's a 71 midget, it has the ventilation provided to the canister, that round canister that fits up inside the fender. All the cars do from 1970 through 1980, the Bs and the midgets. And that's the evaporative loss control system. That's the condensing canister that's up there on the side. Anyway, he said that someone had taken a smaller diameter tube, pushed it down through the hole that used to go to that canister, hooked a fuel pump up to that so it's sucking fuel out of the top of the tank, and he said, I looked underneath and the original fuel pump is there. All the fittings are there. It's like, why would someone do that on top? Anyway, you see the strangest things when you're working all the time. I wanted to talk about 1977 MGB run-on just for a minute. I haven't gone over the rules, but most everybody's on here has been on here before. You can break in anytime. You can unmute yourself and break in anytime to make a comment, even though I talk a lot and frequently. That's nice to have some discussion. Sometimes I think last month or maybe the time before that, we had a really good discussion with lots of people weighing in about this and that. Anyway, you can unmute yourself by going to the bottom of your screen. There's a mute button down there. You can press that with your mouse, or your finger pad and do that. Or it's easier just to press down on the the space bar key. Thank you. The space bar key, press down on that. That will unmute you and you can say whatever it is you want. When you release it, you're muted again. It's really, really handy. Let me give credit where credit is due here before we get into that 1977 run-on problem. I've got a PayPal button on my website, on the front page of my website. It will stay there even after Marty's and my meeting tomorrow with GoDaddy. It'll stay there because that's how I'm able to get some compensation and make something. Thank you very kindly. But it also covers my expenses, which includes Constant Contact, GoDaddy. That was a big one last week. Constant Contact, Zoom. I got to pay Zoom. I even have to pay insurance. I got my insurance bill today. Isn't very much, but it's something. So there's a lot of costs associated with doing this. So you can go to my PayPal button on my website that says something cute like "Help John afford his retirement" and make a contribution. And I do sincerely appreciate those contributions. I do, and I want to recognize the people from since the last session, and those people include, in no particular order, although I'm reading it backwards, Ned Strong, David Basili, Alan Batchelder. I just sent Alan a note. There was a picture. I'm a member of the, go figure, the Daimler and Lanchester Owners Club, just because I like Daimlers. Go figure. And they had a picture in the back of there showing I don't know what they said, a 1949 Triumph Magnette. So I sent that to Alan because he's the head of the Magnette group. But it's not a Triumph, it's an MG, and it's not a 49, it's a 58. But anyway, Alan Batchelder, Tony Shoviak, Mark McCann, John DeCarly, Henry Morgan, Rich Gray, Glenn Nikelski, James Riley, Ron Nugent from Pasadena, Jack Mulliner, Edward Gobert, Joseph Vins, Tom Capehart, Donald Bueller, Roberta Johnson, Bobo Tanner, Jay McComb. I wonder if Jay McComb is related to F. Wilson McComb. Hal Perlman, Jeff Herring, John Ellis, Greg Estep, John Uhas, David Drenning, and Quentin Reeder. So to all of you who made those contributions, thank you very, very kindly for your contribution. I don't want to make this into a begging thing, but I will probably bring this up once more. So next thing is I screwed up my screen, and I'm sure I can get back to it, but view. There we go. Okay, so I want to talk about 1977 MGB run-on. This is not dieseling, this is run-on, although dieseling is often called run-on. So in 1973, there was an anti-run-on valve installed in the Bees and the Midgets, and the Triumphs. And this places a vacuum on top of the gasoline in the float bowl right when you turn the key off. Right when you turn the key off, this vacuum is put on top of the gasoline, so the air going through the carburetor cannot draw any air out of the jet and start for fuel. The engine stops dead, just like that. I mean, when the system is working, it doesn't go ba-bum, 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 it just stops dead if it's working. So in 1977, we've got a wiring change, and there's an introduction of the cooling fans. Now, I was just up in Canada. They only had one cooling fan, but on the the California and federal spec MGBs, there were 2 cooling fans mounted in front of the radiator that, as you face them, should run anti-clockwise if they've got the original fan blades on them. Once in a blue moon, you see them both running the wrong way or one of them running the wrong way. That doesn't help with cooling. Let me tell you, those things draw more power than any other part of the car except the starter motor. They are powerful, powerful fans, and no weenie little fan that you attach to your radiator with a motor on it that should be running a turntable is going to replace the power of those fans and their ability to move air. Because it takes so much energy, they said, well, we're not going to have all that current run through the key switch. So when you turn the key switch on, 77 through 80, it turns on a relay. The relay in turn turns on everything that would turn on when the key was on, except for the fuel pump and the overdrive. Those are not wired through the relay, but the ignition is, until the first couple of months of 78 when they realized their error. So when you go to turn the car off, if the anti-run-on system is working, 77 through 80, the car shuts down because that system is working. But if it's not working, or you've got a different kind of carburetor or something, then the energy, the electricity that's being sent up a brown with yellow wire from the back of the alternator to the ignition warning light switch goes lamp, the ignition warning lamp. The electricity coming out of the alternator goes up to that lamp, through that lamp, and into the white circuit. Now there's hardly any electricity left after it comes out of the bulb because the bulbs have got really high resistance. So it's not enough to cause the ignition relay to close, but it's enough to hold the ignition relay closed. So it stays closed until the fuel pump clicks. That's usually what operates it. And then the drain on the electricity is so much that the points in the relay open up. The net result is your car continues to run. Just runs. Take the key out. I mean, you're sitting there, it's running. You can put it in gear and drive, not too far because the steering wheel's locked, but you can run it. So it's like, oh my gosh, now we know what's going on and why is this happening? I told you why it's happening, because the ignition is routed through this relay and the anti-run-on system is not working. So the cheap trick is just change the wiring so it's the same as it was in the later 78s through 80s. On the fuse box, on the forward side of the fuse box, third fuse down, which I always call the white-green fuse, because it's powered by white, or in this case, white with brown. But the other side of it, the rear side of it, is all green, the green circuit, which is what runs the brake lights and the wiper motor and the heater motor and all the gauges and all that kind of stuff. Not the lights. Lights are on the circuit by itself, but anything that works when the key is on goes through that fuse box. So if you look 77 through early 78, on the forward side of the fuse box, there are 2 connections made into the fuse box. One is a very heavy white with brown that goes from there down to a circuit breaker that runs the cooling fans. And the other one is a pair of white with brown. So one's very heavy, comes from the relay, and one very light gauge white with brown that powers the ignition circuit. So you cut that little white with brown wire off there, put a female spade terminal on it, and piggyback it to the white wire on the ignition relay. The ignition relay lies just to the forward side of the fuse box. When you turn the key on, the white circuit goes hot. That's the white wire we're hooking it to, so that when you turn the key on, the ignition goes hot, and you turn it off, the ignition goes dead, and it won't run on. It'll diesel maybe, a bump, but it won't just continue to run. So if you've got that, if you got a snag with that, if you didn't follow my explanation, because I still haven't got the ability to put up nice pictures and charts and stuff like that. If you got a question about that, just call me later and tomorrow, and I'll go through it again with you. Or I do have a diagram that I can send to you by email. So anyway, yes.
Hi. So if you go to something in the MG Experience, Glenn Lenhart did a PDF that summarizes what you just said.
This
And
Glenn,
and
this Glenn.
yes, that Glenn. So anybody who wants to get that deeper dive into this issue, you can find it on the MG Experience in a special little PDF that Glenn wrote. It's probably a 4-pager with pictures.
Very nice. Excellent, excellent. I used to make it more complicated. We used to take an unused diode out of the wiring diagram, out of the wiring loom behind the fuse box, and splice that into the white with brown. And that stopped the electricity going up to the ignition warning light. And I did that for a long time. And I was talking to Glenn one time, he goes, yeah, I don't know. Some guys suggesting you put a diode in the circuit. Well, that's just stupid. It's so much easier to do it my way. And I said, oh, geez. Geez, sorry, Glenn. Yeah, you're right. So anyway, I've always done it that way since. So I want to go over to our chat section and see what we have. Oh, why doesn't this line up right? I have done something weird with my screen, and so I don't know. It's not responding like I usually have it. I'm so used to having it a certain way. All right, first question up here from Greg Fisher. So Greg, you can unmute yourself and weigh in here. Over the last 2 weekends, I've been struggling with installing my door windows, both passenger and driver side. There must be a trick because it's driving me nuts. Is there a special order that I need to do it in? Yeah. But I'm gonna have to think here about it. Maybe somebody else has done it more recently than I have. But you put the front track in. You get the front track in. You get the rear track in. I guess you put the rear track in before, and you got to angle that glass down. You got to angle it down and catch the 2 rollers on the rollers inside. Oh,
So,
you know.
so the way I've done it, I mean, I had the wind wings out. I mean, it was just a bare door, and I installed everything in it. And then I got the window in. So the window's in, the regulator's in there. The problem is when I go up and down with the regulator, it either the window just kind of falls off the track at the bottom, or it doesn't. As it goes back up, it gets misaligned, and
Okay.
or it gets too tight, or
Okay.
so I'm thinking, well.
John,
Yeah.
I just did it on a GT this week.
Yeah.
Put the regulator in. This is with the wing vent already mounted. Put the regulator in, slide the window down, tilt the regulator, and have somebody else hold the window so you can get the 2 rollers onto the regulator. Straighten the regulator out, put the window crank piece, hook it into the hole, and then adjust the center piece. There's only 3 screws that hold that. Set that first and then do the crank. That's the easiest way to do it.
When do you put the rear track in, Jim?
Well, I put that in, but I don't mount it.
Okay.
Yeah, I put it in and don't mount it because it's too hard to slide the window in. Once you get the window placed on the rollers, placed on the now my brain's forgetting what it is, but you know what I mean.
Once you
get the window on
attached
it,
to the roller, yeah.
yeah. Once you get the rollers in, then you can set that back piece.
But the back piece has to be in there to start.
Oh yeah. Oh God, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's little minor adjustments on the back track. There's even some minor adjustment on the wind wing where you can loosen it up and slide it back or front, the lower part, the upper part. and I've played with it every which direction, and I still get it either the window binds completely, or as it goes up, it falls out of track. I'm thinking it the front comes out, and then I try to shift it the different way, and then the back goes out as it gets to the bottom. It's quite frustrating. I'm thinking maybe I just need to get someone over here that knows what they're doing. I am doing it alone, so I don't have anybody else helping me, but I seemed to get it on the roller all right. That wasn't the problem.
The,
It was,
getting, I used to take anybody who's worked with me knows I love grease and oil, just love them. And I'd oil up those felt tracks. There's probably something better. Perhaps somebody'd say, oh my God, no, use silicone or use graphite, or, well, maybe that's awfully black, but I'm sure people would have better things to use, but I'm a firm believer in oil, and I've never tried anything else. And I put oil in the felt. You didn't replace the felt in the tracks, did you?
I did on the wind wing side. I did not on the back end because it was in good shape, and I didn't want to order again and wait 3 or 4 days to get it.
Well,
so.
I bet some of the problem you're having with the binding is from that, because that's a real dicey, getting that stuff in there just right and everything. That's
Because the bottom of those tracks, they can go deeper into the door, or they get further towards the front. And I don't know if they got to both be exactly aligned, if it works up just right, or if it, there's just so many little adjustments. They're so minor. I thought, come on, I figure, this thing, I can just put it back together as easy as it came out, but not so much.
I'll vote that the felt in your front window is causing some problem in the front track. And then there's a bolt. There's just a stud with a nut on it that sits to the rear of the wind wing and down 3 or 4 inches. That
stops it from over.
Yeah, stops the height, limits the height, and then the bottom is limited by a great big felt pad that fits on the bottom, and just stops the window from moving, I think.
I thought it was actually the gears on the track on the crank that were bent, and it stopped it from going back any further. But let me look for that felt. That was the one I kept seeing in the diagrams in the manual that I said, well, I don't remember seeing that. I don't ever remember taking it off, but it may be there and I'm just missing it. So I'll relook at it. All right. I just thought maybe, oh no, you got to do it in this order, and then it'll just slide right in, and maybe not. Maybe it'll be a third weekend of struggling with this thing. So,
once you get one side.
Exactly.
The second will follow very quickly thereafter.
Yeah, this process, as you know, this was a complete nut and bolt restore. And so I've been working on this thing since I got it back from the paint shop in January. And my goal is April to have this thing running again. So we'll see.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.
Good luck. Okay, just a second here. Now our next one up that's Greg. About ready to try to get a 1976 MGB. Come on, stay still, just a minute. Just a second here, trying to find where I was, and I just lost my place. Okay, from Marnin. I've got a question about replacing the drive shaft in the 78 MGB using hand tools. Not as easily as you'd think. The bolts on the transmission end are partly broken. Oh man, Martin, are you on?
I am, and I thought I'd start with a little show and tell.
Okay.
This is the result of, I guess a couple of weeks ago, I went out for a nice drive out to Stratford, Ontario.
Okay.
Went out on a Saturday. The dog and I went for a nice drive, and on the way home, we had what I'd describe as a catastrophic U-joint failure. So to give you a sense of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, it pulled out of the yoke at the front near the transmission end, and not surprisingly, that stopped us. So, after we were able to finally find somebody to tow us, we got home. And of course, as I pulled out the drive shaft with some difficulty, because the front bolts were actually stripped, on the, on that piece, I realized after taking it to a guy who does drive shafts at a truck shop, who was going to charge me about $500 to rebuild it, I just bought a new one. So one of the Moss ones from somebody from Fred at British Auto in Hamilton area. So I got it home. I made sure to get all new hardware. And of course, as I go to install it, figuring, oh, this is going to be easy. Of course, there are still the bolts, the front bolts. If you see, the sort of semi like moon-shaped one from the front, of course, you can't pull it out of the back because it hits the rear side of the transmission. So under the car, without a lift, with hand tools, trying to get that nut, that 1 5/16 nut off, which does not want to work. And I've actually put enough pressure on it that it starts spinning the transmission even with it in gear. So I realized the problem is because some of the nuts, I mean, this is obviously one of the new ones, because it got stripped, it's sort of almost a chisel edge now, and you can't actually roll the nut on it. So I can't use the old ones. I can cut them off using a grinding wheel or something like that, but I won't be able to fit the new one in because it just fits perfectly. I could either go backwards, but you can't really get purchase on this end of it. So I'd have to use a different nut and have it on the wrong way. Or I guess the other thought I had is, and I don't like this idea, grind down the bolt just a little bit so that I can slide it in and out. Alternatively, I have to take it to a mechanic using a rattle gun and just take that center nut off, and then they can replace the rear oil seal on the transmission.
Okay, so if you, that's a 1 5/16 nut on the back of the gearbox, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're underneath
At
there,
150 foot-pounds of torque.
if you're underneath there with a breaker bar and you've got it up against the gearbox tunnel.
Yeah.
The car's in reverse, you've pulled the coil wire so it can't start. And you get someone to engage the starter, then it's gonna run, runs anti-clockwise as seen from the back.
Okay.
So if you put it
And I'm trying to turn it
reverse,
anti-clockwise.
but you got to get some power. You got to hold that nut.
Yeah.
So what I'm in my head here, because on the front end, you hold the nut against the left front fender. You hold it off to the right because the engine's going like that, and then you crank it, and that nut will come off. The front pulley nut will come off easily with starter motor torque. So if you're doing it in the back end, and let's see, that runs anti-clockwise. So you got to put it in reverse, and then have somebody just hit the starter motor. I bet it'll come off. It might lock up. Maybe the starter motor can't go through that gearing. I don't know. I haven't tried it before. I've always had an impact gun, but that's a possibility. The other one is there is a flat spot on the gearbox, but I think that's at the top, so you can't see it or get to it. You could take your cutoff wheel, if you got one on a Dremel or a die grinder or something, and shave a little bit of the aluminum off the bottom of the gear case, just a little bit, so you can get that friggin' bolt out of there and the new one in.
Can I
So you
interject
mean like
something?
on the
John?
flange itself, flatten it so.
Not on the flange, but on the aluminum. But Fred's got an idea here.
What I've done when I've had a transmission out, but it would work with it in the car as well, is I took a piece of like angle iron with some holes in it that'll fit on 2 of those bolts that are sticking out. I use that as a brace, so it goes up against the bottom of the car, and then crank out with the wrench.
That's a good thought. I try to block a wood to hold it still, and that doesn't do it.
It's actually a piece of angle iron with specific holes in it
Yeah,
that'll fit that flange bolts.
That makes good sense.
In the flange, the bolt pattern on the flange is rectangular. It's not square.
Right, right.
Ever so slightly. I've got a tool for working differentials, for tightening up a diff by putting that tool on it and everything. But when these bolts are all semi-fractured, oh, what a mess.
The other option, as John said, is an impact driver.
Mhm.
And you can use a handheld one with a hammer. You've seen those little handheld ones, but also like Harbor Freight has a lithium ion battery operated one. I use it like 10 times a day. It works on everything. It's great. It's
Does
not
it have enough
$250, but
torque?
you use it all the time.
No, that sounds good, but would it have enough torque to move it? Because I
Oh,
know
yeah.
they say it's really.
Oh, yeah.
Those things will knock out 150 pounds pretty easily. It's hammering it, but it's controlled. So
Yeah.
anyway, so those are some ideas.
Excellent. Those are great ideas. I've tried swearing creatively, which makes you feel better, but it doesn't help. I'll ask one quick question, John, before, as you were talking about your travels up this way and a little farther east. On the way back, I figured you were going to say that you stopped off yesterday at Bronte Creek at the British Car Show, but no?
But I drove back on Friday.
Got it.
So
Yeah, I didn't go in this year either. Anyways, thank you.
I was supposed to because at MG 2022 in Peterborough, I borrowed a screwdriver from someone, and then I got home, and despite the fact that I lose tools, I also gain tools on those trips. So then I put an ad out and said, whose screwdriver is this? And some guy contacted me, I think, and I said, well, I'll bring it up when I come up to Canada, and then totally forgot all about it. So I gotta ship that up to him. But yes, I'd like to come to that meeting next year. That might be a lot of fun, because the organizers say you get 400 or 500 cars up there. So
They said this year they expected 1,000 cars and 9,000 attendees.
All British.
I figured I'll wait for another year and let COVID be even quieter before. Anyways, thanks. And thanks, Fred, for your thoughts.
Oh, yep. Good luck. Okay, let's see. Right, this is from iPhone. iPhone 4 to everybody. Your recommendation for water pump gasket installation. Shellac? What should you use on the oil pump gasket? You know me, I love grease. You grease the gasket, you make sure that the mating surfaces are clean, and then you just gob the gasket with grease. Number 2, NLGI, number 2, lithium grease, and gob up the bolts, put lots of grease on those, and when you go to take it off again, it just comes away. And if both the mating surfaces are clean, that paper gasket will hold the water pressure in there, no problem. So grease on there, grease on the thermostat gasket, and grease on the heater control gasket. Those are all places and carburetor gaskets. Grease on all kinds of gaskets. So, all right, from Judd. Okay, we had a gazillion cars at the Dillard, Georgia show last Saturday, about 3/4 of a gazillion MGs and half a gazillion MGBs. Great show. Next Saturday is Autumn in the Mountains at Mills River, North Carolina, and over 215 cars are pre-registered. So, Judd, you can make your campaign for getting us down to North and South Carolina.
It's a horrible photograph, but this was part of the field at Dillard.
Okay.
Interestingly, they divided the MGBs up into, I believe it was 4 different categories, like the 50, what would it be? The
Usually 61 through 67 is usually one category, and then you got the chrome bumpers, and then you usually split the rubber bumpers in 2 because there's so many of them.
Right, so it was like I was in the 70. You can't really see it, but next to that orange car on the left, mine is a little green one right next to it. And out of about 20 cars, I walked home with a little trophy, very last place, but nonetheless. Anyway, so if y'all, anybody is in the North Carolina area, come to Mills River. We're gonna have a hell of a good show. And it's at a local brewery. So even if you don't want to watch cars, you can have a local beer. Enough said.
So who do we contact, Judd, to find out how to do that? How to get there? Is there a club that's doing that in Gownsville? Or Mountains at Mills River? How would you find out information about that?
Yeah, Western North Carolina British Car Club.
Okay,
Yeah, they're a great outfit.
okay, all right. Well, thank you very much. All right, here we got from Art Rankin. John, I'm seeing some green antifreeze around spark plug number 3. Not much, but still some. I'm at a loss where it's coming from, 78 MGB. Well, the bad news, Odd, are you on? You can unmute yourself if you are. You probably are on. But anyway, the bad news is the head is cracked externally. It's not uncommon. The reason it's cracked is because the head is bowed. When you put it on, it's supposed to go on absolutely straight, but it ends up bowing at the ends because of a problem with the fit of the head gaskets. I'll explain why and how not to have it happen on the next head that you got. So what are you gonna do in the meantime? Anything you can. Anything's cheaper than changing the head. I mean, oh my gosh, that's a huge project. You buy a brand new head, that's expensive. You buy a used head and have it reworked, that's expensive. You're looking at somewhere between $1,200 or $1,500 and maybe $800. So you can put in some radiator stop leak. You can reduce the pounds on the radiator cap so it doesn't leak. But cracks don't get better, cracks get worse, so just monitor it.
How about JB Weld?
You could try that, but it's on the outside and it won't work. I mean, you try it. I mean, take a die grinder and see what you can do to find the crack, clean it all up and make a V and put that in. But if you take your radiator cap and drop it down to a 4-pound cap or something, and usually you don't need a high poundage. T-types ran TCs and TDs ran open systems. They didn't even pressurize the system. And the only reason the system's pressurized is to keep it from boiling. But a 78 MGB runs nice and cool anyway, usually. So you can make a case for having that put in the radiator cap, tightening it up at all, just leave it loose. Anyway, there are 11 studs that hold the cylinder head in place. And so you got 11 holes in the cylinder head. The studs are 3/8 of an inch. The holes in the cylinder head are 7/16, except for the center one on the right-hand side between the number 2 and number 3 spark plug. That's the locating stud for the cylinder head. So the cylinder head ends up being more correctly placed than not. So when you put the head gasket onto the studs and then put the head on and start to squeeze the head down, the cylinder head gasket starts off at a certain thickness, but as you compress it, it gets thinner, right? But it also moves out. So in 10 of those places, the incremental amount that it moves can get between the stud and the cylinder head, and that 32nd of an inch that's left between the stud and the hole in the cylinder head, and it can climb up into that a little bit if it has to, but not there between 2 and 3. There it bunches up. You keep torquing the head down, and it ends up holding it high in the middle, so it ends up arcing. And then stresses the cast iron and cracks the head. So what can you do? You buy a real cheap chamfering tool at the hardware store. And before you put the next head on, you take that chamfering tool and go to each one of those 11 holes. If you're gonna do one, you might as well do them all. And that gives the cylinder head gasket a nice place to move into if it expands. So there's all kinds of tricks done on the cylinder head, but geez, right at the end of production, they took the cooling holes out of the cylinder head on that side to try to reduce, the warranty complaints from that happening. But I found that by chamfering the cylinder head, that takes care of it. But the head is cracked.
Well, I'll try the low pressure cap on the system.
Yeah, or no cap. Yeah, yep.
No cap at all?
Just stick it on there, but don't tighten it up. So just have it there so the stuff doesn't bounce out of your overflow tank. But yeah, just try it.
John, I got a related question.
Yes, sir.
Got a 1275 engine, about to put the head back on. One of the studs came out of the block when I took the head off.
Sure.
How do I get that stud back into the block tight enough?
Well, you only need it in under 5 pounds. So you don't want to crank down on it real tightly, because when the stud's going down and you start to get it really tight, the metal around the stud in the block lifts. So we're into the same problem that we're just talking about here.
Okay, so what's the first thing you said? I only need how many pounds?
5.
Okay.
That's all. So, I mean, I know it sounds really crude, but if you take a pair of vice grips and grab the stud and just get it snug and then release the vice grips, you haven't marred up the stud much. This isn't aircraft quality stuff. This isn't race car stuff. I mean, anybody in the world would say, oh my God, no, don't do that. Don't do that. So if you don't want to grab it with a pair of studs, take two nuts, 2 fine nuts, and stick them on the top and jam them and roll it around. But all you need is 5 pounds there.
John, would it do any good to remove the head and do the chamfering as you suggested and put a new gasket on and put it down to relieve the pressure?
Maybe, probably not. Maybe, don't know.
Okay. It isn't much. It's just a barely little trace of it in there, but
Yep.
I never saw it before.
Yep, it's sometimes you see it on the inside of the valve cover. You take the valve cover off and there's a little green line there too. And of course that evaporates and mixes with the oil. If the evaporative loss control system is good, rather the PCV system, positive crankcase ventilation system is good, then there's no problem. That'll work out okay. And it'll evaporate the, whatever steam comes in the inside of the engine. But just keep watching it and watching your fluid, because it just, at some point it's gonna, again, they rarely get better.
Okay.
You can buy stop leak, but then you wonder, geez, am I gonna, stop up some of the tubes in the radiator? Is that a good idea or not?
Yeah. I wonder.
John, if I can say,
Yeah.
I use bars stop leak, and I actually talked to one of the bars family, and they guarantee that there's no residual after whatever leak you're fixing is fixed. He said you won't find any more bars in the system. And he said they're the only ones at the time when I talked to them that the manufacturers, the big three, would use. And they actually put that stuff in sometimes from the factory, which I was surprised at. But the original bars, I actually fixed a cracked block one time. I didn't think I could do it, but I watched the leak stop, and for years it never leaked again. It's a good product. And an interesting story, I don't take too much time, but an interesting story. He was on an airplane next to a naval officer, and he found out what the man did. And the naval officer said, well, he said, the submarine that went under the polar ice cap the first time, they had a coolant leak really bad and he couldn't find it. And they were in New York Harbor. He told his sailors to dress in civilian clothes and buy all the bars stop leak they could find. And that was the old stuff with the pellets. They put it in, stopped the leak. They went under the polar ice cap and nobody ever knew until he told them that day. So it doesn't, you're better off doing what John was saying, you know, fix it properly. But in the meantime, that stuff really does work.
Thanks.
Hey,
Thank you.
John, real quick,
Yeah,
if you're using aluminum head, is that a little more forgiving to this kind of warping that you're talking about?
the aluminum head will bend. It'll bend. It won't crack. It's not brittle.
But they're
Aluminum-
pricey.
Well, yeah, you know, what's Moss get for that now? All built up 1,300 or something. So, I mean, that's just number off the top of my head. I don't have the catalog here, but it's expensive, you know, it just is, you know, but that's, what do you know, your head's ruined. What are you gonna do? You know, eventually you gotta do something, so. But the aluminum head's nice, though, those are pretty forgiving. You still should chamfer them.
John, there was I read a service a memo. It was from Triumph, BL, and apparently the TR7s had some kind of leak in them. I don't know if it was the head, the radiator, or what. But their solution to the problem was apparently there's a filler on the top of the thermostat housing.
Correct.
And you would open that up, put the bars leak in, and they'd tighten it up, and then they'd put on some kind of goop to let the future people know that that was already taken care of. That was their solution. I can't find it anymore because I've got tons of those things, but it was interesting.
If it's good, if it's good enough for the Nautilus, it's got to be good enough for a Triumph, yeah, or an MG, absolutely.
Yep.
All right, well, there are lots of comments there, you know. Okay, so Brian to everybody, I'm about ready to get a 76 MGB running after sitting for 26 years. Should I even attempt to mess with the Stromberg carb? Sure, of course. You know, but I'm Mr. Fix-It. I was just working on the Stromberg carburetor today, as a matter of fact. So, you know, I mean, you've got so many options. If you're getting it up and going after all those years, I don't know if my website's working well enough to get my complete lube off there or not, but good grief, follow that, drain all the oils, refill all the oils, do everything like the University Motors Complete Lubrication does. New tires, all new brakes, rebuild your front calipers. Well, I'd make a case of just exercising them. You probably don't even have to rebuild them. And then on that Stromberg, you know, you can take it off, you can take it apart, clean it, get a kit, put it together if you know what you're doing. If you don't, send it to somebody who knows what they're doing. If you're gonna change, if you just get excited, you go, you know, I'm gonna get dual SUs on this and make it run better. It'll run some better. It will, not dramatically. It'll run some better. Then get HS carburetors with the float bowls on the side rather than HIF with the float bowls on the bottom. And then you don't have to take them off the car quite so frequently. Anything goes wrong with an HIF, you have to take it off the car. It's just a hassle. And then you have to get aftermarket.
This car belongs to my sister-in-law. I have had it running, and it running with the Stromberg. I know for a fact that that it does need brakes right from the firewall right on out.
Yeah.
But I have messed with that water choke. I calibrated it to some degree and it seemed to work, but then she ran out of money. But, so it's still sitting. but I'm thinking I'm about to get into it again. So I was just wondering all the horror stories about these Stromberg carbs. Just wondering what you thought about.
It's, you know, it's just another carburetor.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
another carburetor made up out of bits and pieces, you know, so I shut down the, I shut down the overrun or the air bleed valve on the right-hand side. I shut that all the way down. I solder up the overrun valve in the throttle disc. I calibrate the choke, make sure everything's okay. I resize the jet. Sometimes
A
you
little
gotta get,
richer, a little leaner.
well, you want to, nothing ever occurs on a Stromberg that makes it run lean. That's not true. I've seen 2 or 3 that have run lean, but it's the problem is that they're always running too rich. You can resize the jet. You can work with a. If you send me an email, johntwist@universitymotorsltd.com. I'll send you back my Stromberg article about how to go through them and how to sand the automatic choke and get that flat. There's just a whole bunch of little things that go wrong with them, but everything's known. So in the needles, oh my gosh, after 26 years, the needle looks like the roof of a European cathedral. You know, so you either got to clean that with some really fine paper, 600 paper, something like that, or or buy a new one. You know, so and anything's cheaper than switching to a whole nother system.
Well, see, that's kind of why I was going in this direction, you know, because I mean, there's all kinds of options, but
if you haven't got any money, then you're stuck making that carburetor work. And what's a kit and a needle cost? $50. You know,
I'll be a hero then.
Call me if you got some questions about that. I'm really good with the Strombergs. So
okay, I got a real quick question. Greg Fisher still there. Greg, what color is that blue on your car?
Who are you talking to?
Greg Fisher, is he still there?
Greg, Greg, you there? We'll ask Greg later. He's stepped away.
That's right. Maybe he's gone. I just I got another bee I want to paint, and I wonder what blue that was.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
Okay, I'm gonna hit mute all and get rid of all the background noise, and we're going to Sandy. What's your opinion regarding the use of Seafoam? Hey, if it works, you know, try it. There's a lot of stuff out there, snake oil, but I've heard people say that they run this stuff through their gasoline, and I don't know what it does. I don't know what it's supposed to do. I don't even know what the stuff is. It sure isn't Seafoam. You know, it's something, but I don't know. Sandy, are you there? Yeah, I see you.
Yeah, no, I was just, my mechanic ran some stuff through it, and then I was thinking about the use of it on because it does clean whatever it cleans. If during a fill up, and I was told to go to a non ethanol gas, which I'm going to do also, but if I use that with a non ethanol gas, the Seafoam should allow for a cleaner system, clean out whatever gunk is in there. So the only thing I'm afraid of is when it cleans stuff out that shouldn't be cleaned out because it's in the holes or in passageways that shouldn't be cleaned out, will I open myself up for a bag of worms?
I don't think so. I haven't heard any complaints about it. I mean, that it's done recognizable damage. There's all kinds of stuff that people do and use. Using the non-ethanol gas is handy if it's available. I always buy premium on my own MGA, and sometimes that comes with alcohol, sometimes it doesn't. It's nice to put in the car if you can, but if you have to drive 30 miles to do it, what's the point of using up 2 gallons of gasoline to go get a tank, you know? So anyway,
I don't use the car that often.
Okay. Right. Anybody else
I
got
use
any experience with Seafoam?
I've used the Seafoam.
Yeah.
I've used the Seafoam. It's really just a fuel injector cleaner or carburetor cleaner. And I've used it on my Ford F-250 for years. It works great. I've used it on Subarus. It's just a basic fuel additive to clean carburetors and injectors and stuff.
John,
Yes.
on gasoline, all gasoline has an additive in there for cleaning. Yeah, you really shouldn't, really and truly, if you want to waste the money on seafoam, that's your prerogative. You're just making somebody rich on that part. To me, I think all that stuff is snake oil.
John,
Yeah,
it worked. I had a 2007 Mini Cooper with the direct fuel injection, and it was turbocharged. So all the bypass stuff went over the valves, no gasoline or anything else to clean those valves off. And a lot of people were having trouble with that gumming up with the carbon deposits and whatever. And you had to take the head, you had to use walnut shells to clean it off. My Mini was bought by my neighbor. He now has 145,000 miles on that. Before every oil change, we pull that bypass hose off and sit there and spray a can of seafoam through there. Now it smokes up like hell, but that is not carboned up or it's not a mess. And I've also used a spray. There's a spray seafoam, and I've run it through the lawnmower. And you want to talk about spewing black crap out. Now, I've got a blacktop driveway, so it doesn't matter. But if you do that on cement, it'll blow out stuff through the exhaust. So it does clean carbon off. And I've been John, I don't remember who was the technical advisor for Namberger in 2003. Was that Norm Knock?
No, it would have been Captain Mason.
Oh, yes. He was the one that recommended that to me in 2003. And I thought seafoam sounded like a joke.
Like snake oil.
Yes, it's been around since the 1930s. It was developed by Sinclair Gas, basically for marine engines that were getting, the two cycles that were getting messed up. And it's good stuff. I mean, I've been using it in the MGs. I use it in all our cars. I've been using it in my GTI, for the same reasons, because it's, again, direct fuel injection, so nothing goes over the valves, and it does help clean them off.
Okay. Well, anyway, it seems as though using it isn't going to hurt anything, and and we've got a lot of anecdotal, stuff here that people believe it does work. So
yeah.
So it's there are things like re-lead that there is, like John Tershak said, there's a lot of snake oil out there. Absolutely. So. Okay, next one up here.
I was just wondering.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
One other question. They also recommend to put an ounce or a capful per quart of oil. That I'm a little wary of, simply because you're diluting the oil. I don't know to what extent. Plus, again, if it's a rabid cleaner, if it takes decrease your compression, because it's going to clean up the scratches on the cylinder walls or what have you. So has anyone had any, people have said they're using the oil prior to an oil change. You put it in the oil and you drive it for 100, 200 miles, and then you change the oil. So what would you think of that? Use of that?
That's a little creepier, but I don't know. I don't know. I remember back in the day when people were using their MGs for primary transportation, and we were servicing them all throughout the winter in Michigan. Before we discovered what the problem was with the HIF carburetors and the faulty rotary chokes, we'd have cars that would come in smoking. Oh my gosh! And you'd drain out the sump, and instead of 1 gallon of oil, you'd have 2 gallons of oil and gasoline. And oh my gosh, you took the valve cover off, it was sparkly inside. It was beautiful because all that gasoline washed away all the dirt. But of course, there's not much lubrication. That was a lot of gasoline. I can't imagine a tablespoon or a cap full of seafoam is going to hurt anything in your oil. That's just good. That's just good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Wayne Peterson. I've got a MGB GT. The previous owner removed the center portion of the cross member between the jacking points. Should I repair it? If so, what's the simplest way of doing so? Oh my gosh, yeah, somebody was doing a clutch and just decided that little tiny, it's only that wide, you know, Wayne, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, you know, I don't know, there's a lot of torsional rigidity in the car, but oh my gosh, I mean, that's a really down deep essential part of the unibody. On the other hand, if you left it out, it probably won't make any difference. And what are you gonna do to put it back in? You know, one plate, even one plate across the bottom that you put in, of course, you gotta weld it in, you know, and that's, you know, how can you weld upside down? And I mean, you can, but it's just a hassle getting it clean and all that kind of stuff. I think it's almost impossible to bolt it into place. I think because of the way the frame member, you know, the frame members are hollow, and it's, oh my gosh, I don't know. If it was my car, I'd try to do something. So what would I try to do? I don't know. Whatever was easiest, and you got some sort of strength back.
Yeah, I considered putting an angle iron across between the two pieces that are there and bolting it in.
Sure. If you put some
About
flanges.
twice the section of what's there is it's pretty thin metal right now.
Yeah,
I could equate the strength of it probably.
sure. Yeah, if you put some flanges up the side and drilled through them, and then shove the thing up through and drill through the part of the gearbox tunnel and stuff, maybe, you know, hey, anything, it's all that torsional rigidity. John Thornley the guy from Texas who did Inside the Octagon, those videos, he's interviewing John Thornley, and they've got an MGB with the doors open, both the doors are open. And Thornley says, well, look at it. He says, there are two very large parts of motor car separated by very nearly nothing. It's just that, you know, that's it. The sills and the transmission pump and the floor, you know, so yeah, I'd put something back in there.
This is a GT, so it does have a roof over it too. Thank you.
I've seen that. That's the poor man's clutch.
John,
Yes.
this is Paul. I have a 79B that was cut for transmission by removal for a previous owner.
Uh-huh.
And they put a channel iron or piece of channel and 4 long bolts, 2 on each side
Okay.
of the cut, and seems to be fine.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. I appreciate
Hey,
that.
where are you from, Wayne?
San Luis Obispo, California.
Oh my gosh, the sun's still up there.
It's raining.
Hey, proof that God exists. Oh my gosh. It just rained down in southern LA last week. So yeah. All right, Ned Strong, you're up next. Why does my front carburetor whistle? It's a 66 MGB. Fred Horner can answer that.
I was going to say because it doesn't know the words, but
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know why it would whistle.
Oh, inlet leak. Just an inlet leak. Either is a torn gasket. Sometimes if you take a hold of the carburetors while it's whistling, and it probably whistles worse on deceleration, because that's when the manifold vacuum is higher, or jiggle the throttle shafts, or actually get a hold of the carburetor, push it up and down, or rock it back and forth. And but if there's a leak, I mean a pinhole leak in the gasket or in the spacer block, that I've seen spacer blocks broken before, and if there's an inlet, or you can take a hose, 2-foot piece of heater hose, put it up close to your ear and just listen around. You can find exactly where the whistle's coming from, but my money's on the bad gasket. So Ned Strong, are you still there?
Yes, I am. Yes,
Oh,
I am.
all right, okay. So when was the last time those carburetors were off?
A few hours ago. But I put new gaskets on it, so I don't know what the deal is. So
Okay.
it might be the block. I'll look at that that spacer block. I didn't
Well,
think
it
about that.
could be the throttle shafts. You use grease on those gaskets, lots of grease. There's 6
didn't.
gaskets, right, between the, and then if you listen, I mean, it could be at the bottom of, of the PCV valve too, although you said it's from the front carburetor, so.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Hey, good luck. Where are you calling from?
Grantham, New Hampshire.
Okay. Drake, Ambrosino. Drake, oh my gosh. Are you on? Well, we'll see here in a minute. Why does my 76 exhaust stink so much? My garage carbon monoxide alarm sounds when I return from a drive. It's because it's running too rich. So, great. If you're on, you can unmute yourself. Drake's from Ann Arbor. Drake bought an MGTD from me in 1973. We go back a long way. But anyway, so if a stinky exhaust is almost always, but carbon monoxide is incomplete combustion. So again, we get too much. It's too rich. So that's my guess. That's my guess on that one. So, all right, Ott, you're up next. John, I'm seeing some green antifreeze on spark plug number 3. We've already done that one. Ben Andrews, I just did the 140 foot-pounds on a banjo axle pinion. It was very difficult to keep the car from moving forward. I agree with Fred. You should make an angle iron brace with 2 holes and grinder radius to clear the socket. So what Ben Andrews from Valparaiso is talking about is holding the rear flange. Earlier, we were talking about on the back of the gearbox for Marnin's gearbox, but in this case, Ben is working on the front of changing the front seal on a differential, and you gotta get that nut really tight, and there's no way to keep the flange from turning, not when you're putting 100 pounds on it, unless you're using a rattle gun, and then you can do it, you hold it by hand and rattle up the 140 pounds. But if it's still, and if you're doing it incrementally or with a breaker bar, yeah, you gotta have some way to hold that. So are you on, Ben?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you got that sorted out okay then?
Yeah, it was all good. I'm just saying, I had my wife on the brakes. I had blocks wedging the front tires, the weight on the tires. That car was on the move. So I couldn't imagine Marmon trying to do a transmission where you only have the engine friction to stop it.
Okay.
You need something.
Yep.
Grab the flange,
Yep.
Thanks.
That's all.
All right. Okay. Next one up here, we got Mike. Mike, it says MA, Mike, like Mike, Massachusetts, maybe 75 midget. I've never driven another MG, and my question is, how do you know when you need new rear leaf springs? Mine are original. They seem to be in okay shape, but going over big bumps, the car does whack the stops. So you've got leaf springs in the back, and of course the leaf spring really kind of stays in the same place, right? I was talking about the leaf spring going up and down, but in fact, it's the body that goes up and down. So there are straps to keep the body from coming up too high, and there's a rubber bump to keep it from coming down. So maybe that rubber bump is missing. But mainly the important thing is that the rear end of the car is the same distance, the wheel arch is the same distance off the ground left and right. So you just get out a tape measure, and you measure it from the ground through the center of the wheel to the bottom of the wheel arch on one side and go over to the other side. They shouldn't be different more than, I don't know, half an inch, you know, I mean, you know, how close do you want to get? If you're really, really dialed in, you know, it's in within an eighth of an inch. You cannot have midget springs rebuilt. They're too narrow. Most spring shops won't touch them. They will do MGA and MGB and T-type springs, but they won't do midget springs. So that means you got to buy new ones, and the supply, the quality of the new ones is erratic. Some of them are just great, they're perfect, some others aren't. You can change them from side to side to side if the left rear is sagging a little bit. And when you get in it, of course, then it sags more, right? But you can, if you're, you know, if you're on a budget, you can switch them side to side, get a little more distance out of the back end. But the whacking at the stops is either because the rubber's missing, and you got to look in the catalog and see what I'm talking about, see what's
It is
there.
there, but I did use a polyurethane one. I'm wondering maybe I should just switch to the rubber.
You know, and the shocks are good back there.
I put new ones on, it didn't make a difference. Well, I put rebuilt ones on.
Yeah, that's the same thing. Okay.
In fact, I have
Oh.
a picture, you can see it right there. I don't know if you could see that while I talk here, but that's the leaf spring. Yeah, that's kind of rusty. I painted it long time ago, but they're original bushings. It doesn't clank or any noise, but when I go over a big bump and you know, you hear a thump, you know, and my wife's in the car and she's Latina and she'll say coño.
Yeah.
When it whacks. So I always wondered, you know, I've never driven another midget. I don't know what to expect out of the rear suspension. So I never.
Well, it shouldn't bottom out like that. So another question is like, how much does that change when you get into it? If you're same size as your wife and you can't tell, but if you're different sizes, you can switch side to side. And then of course you need the third person to do some measuring. But there's got to be something back there, and it probably doesn't evidence itself. You probably can't jack it up and see a ring of where metal's gone to metal or something like that. Probably not. So.
Okay.
It's a heavy car. It's a heavy car for the suspension that's on it. It started off life as a Bug-Eye Sprite. Of course, that had quarter elliptic springs, but right after they got the 64, they got half elliptic springs, and it was still a really light car. And now cars are 40 years old. The later ones with the rubber bumpers and the extra strengthening in the doors, and yours is a 75, so it's got
all original.
It's got the Triumph engine and gearbox in it. Those are heavier than the BMC ones. So there's a lot of extra weight on that car too, you know. So
Okay.
So I don't have an answer in the end.
All right. Well, I think if I'm going to mess with the springs, I'll probably try to get new ones on it.
Yeah.
I'm going to go
So
through all the
we're-
work to get them off. So
Excuse me, where are you?
I'm in Framingham, Massachusetts. but I've
Okay.
got MA on my.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So MH is weighed in here apparently on this. If you're hitting the rubber stops, then it's probably time to replace the springs. Not unusual to find one of the leaves broken. That's exactly true. So, all right, from Barry Spear. Land Rover had a bad cylinder head gasket and used a liquid fluid that worked great on my cracked cylinder head I got from the Jaguar dealer. Okay, so this is more about bars leak on steroids. So Barry Spear, are you there? You still here yet? So from Suzuki, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it. We got it as Zuski. I've got a 60 MGA, And earlier this year, went for a drive, and the engine lost power and was making noise from the engine. This doesn't sound good. I was able to get home. I replaced the plugs and it idles great. I go for a drive and the noise comes back when driving only under load. What should I be looking for next? This is from Ken. So Ken, it sounds to me like there's a problem with the rod bearings. I mean, that just sounds like it to me, but I don't know what kind of sound that this is. Are you still on, Ken?
Yes, I am, John.
Okay, so you go to put your foot in this and it goes diddle, that kind of noise?
When you give it some gas, it goes like like that sound,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. Almost always that's a bad rod bearing. And it's, if you let it alone and continue to drive it, the results will be catastrophic. Something will come apart. You put a rod through the side of the block, something horrible like that. Once it starts to rattle like that, there's nothing you can do with it in place. You've got to take the engine out and have the crankshaft reground. You can go just that far. If you got to take the front engine bearing plate and the rear engine bearing plate off. You can leave the head on, you can leave the pistons in. It's awfully hard to do that because anything you look at when the engine's older, anything you look at is going to be faulty and you're going to say, well, I should change this, or I should change that. So you've either got to decide whether you're going to go the whole route, which is, oh my gosh, $4,000. And that's if you're doing the work, taking the engine in and out of the car. Or you just take the engine out and take the crank out. So that's my guess. What's your oil pressure on this?
The last time I looked at when I was running, I think it was like 140. Does that sound right?
No, 40 would, but no, not 140.
Oh, that's the water temperature, sorry.
It's okay.
55.
Well, that's great. That's just fine. That's a fine oil pressure, but something's loose. And it might be even something more bizarre than that. One of the pistons has started to come apart or something. So you can take the sump off the engine in place. Tedious. I mean, most people would elect to take the front mounts loose and jack the engine a little up in the frame a little bit, but you don't have to. I've taken sumps off without taking the motor mounts out. It'll tax your mechanical abilities. You got to have a little S snake wrench to get those bolts way at the front. But if you take the sump out, there might be something in it, and then you go, got to take the engine apart. But it doesn't sound good at all. Any kind of rattle, especially under load, means that it's telling you, don't drive me. So that's just too bad. Yeah.
This is Judd. Last month, I asked you about what I thought was a timing chain rattle on my TD. And you said it's probably a spun bearing, rod bearing. And so we started investigating it, and I hope that Suzuki is as lucky as I am. Turns out that the nut on the front of that holds the pulley on the generator was gone completely. It had come off and it's on the side of the road somewhere. And the rattle that sounded, if you're in the car, like it was coming from deep down inside the motor, when we finally, fired it up in the shop and opened the bonnet and started looking for it with a stethoscope, we discovered this marvelous, wonderful, couldn't be better problem. Put another nut on the thing so that the little fan gizmo wasn't rattling like crazy, and the thing is just as smooth as silk. So obviously it could be bad, or he could just maybe get lucky and find something else, but you really got to search for it. And if it's only under load, it's really hard to find. You got to almost have somebody riding on the fender.
That doesn't sound safe. Yeah. Well, that's why those underload rattles are bad rattles. There's a particular rattle that you get from the front pulley when the keyway fails in the crank or in the pulley, or the keyway, or all three of them fail, and the front pulleys actually can turn against the crank. So when it's idling, depending on what's going on, the front pulley is moving all over the place. It sounds like a diesel, clack, 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 clack. And as soon as you bring the RPM up, the noise goes away because everything's under tension. But yeah, there's all, but just because it's under load here, Fred's is under, he gets that noise under load. But you always do the cheapest, easiest, simplest stuff first. And even, I mean, taking the pan off's a hassle, but that's a whole lot simpler than taking the engine out to start with, just so.
All right, well, thank you very much.
You can, if you want to call me later when you've, you get a little farther, if you want some more information, I'm happy to help you out. So.
All right, well, thank you, John. Appreciate it.
John?
George.
I had that same problem on my MGB, and I removed spark plug number 2, actually removed the wire, and the noise went away.
Was that just was that under load, or was that all the time?
Well, I drove the car for over an hour. That's when it showed up, is when it was real hot. And then in the spring of the year, I pulled the sump off it and found that number 2 was scored pretty good. So I removed the engine at that point.
Okay. So that's one way you can pull off one plug at a time, go out and drive and see if you get the same rattling. And if you pull off the plug wire on number 2 and you don't get any rattle, then you know for sure it's a rod knock, because you haven't got that downward force, in the combustion. So anyway, yep, boy. Ben Andrews weighs in over here on chat with some more information about Seafoam. Says he uses Tectron by Chevron. So anyway, there's some more information there. And then Charles Givra, do we post questions here? Yes. And here we go, Charles. Hi there, I've got a 58 MGA and I've been working on installing a Judson supercharger. Engine was running great prior to the supercharger. I installed the blower, which came with a Weber 3236, and I cannot get the thing to run well at all. I'm thinking it's running way too lean. When you step on the gas, the engine pops out the carb. That's textbook case, too retarded or too lean. Yes. Is it nominally better? It's nominally better with the choke on. Okay, that again tells us that maybe it's too lean. I've tried putting a bigger jets on the Weber, but I really don't know what I'm doing with respect to tuning the Weber. So that used to come, Charles, that came with a Solex, didn't it originally?
It was a Holley 1-barrel.
Holley, yep. And I just don't know about that other carburetor. I don't know about that, but I do know that if you don't run the belts to run the Judson, and you still have belts running the water pump and the generator, that whether the Judson's running or not, that 3236 ought to work okay. You might get some more information if you talk to Pierce Manifolds I think they're in Riverside, California. They're the monster importers of all the Webers. They make the manifolds. They wouldn't have any success selling the manifolds if they didn't sell the carburetors. So they might be able to help you out with that a little bit. generally speaking, I mean, it's a real thrashy supercharger. It just sounds like it's grating. Makes a horrible sound, but it does work. I mean, you get up to a higher RPM, and it gives quite a lot of boost. But I don't think it's timing's critical, and I tell everybody 32 degrees, absolutely, but not with a blower. Not with a blower. Your maximum timing probably ought to be up around 28, but I don't know a whole lot. Who's the Judson supercharger guy? There's one guy in the States that rebuilds Judsons.
George Fulci.
Yes.
Yeah.
What does he say?
So I did talk to him, and first off, he referred me to this other guy who sells these recurve distributors for supercharged MGAs, which I did get that. I installed that. That did seem to help a bit. That kind of, so I felt like I was going in the right direction there. But it's still, I can't get the thing rich enough.
And if you're driving along and you pull the choke out, does it feel like it runs a lot better?
It does feel like it runs better. It's still really not good enough to like actually drive anywhere outside of the neighborhood, though. That's like the bigger problem.
Well, that's frustrating.
Yeah, especially since we have good weather right now.
Where are you calling from?
Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay. Well, I want to blame the carburetor. And maybe if you call Pierce Manifolds and ask them for a whole new package of jets and whatever's inside those things, just a whole kit, and you go through it. I know we used to take them apart, those downdrafts for MGBs, and every now and then there'd be some passageway that was blocked. You take a single filament out of a single wire out of a stiff wire. You could clean stuff out. I mean, it all came down to cleaning. So, but more than that, I can't tell you. I talked some more with George, I think. See,
okay.
Come up with something like that. So
thank you.
Hey, you're very, very welcome. Where'd that car come from?
I've had it for about 20 years, but I bought it from someone in Missouri, in St. Louis.
Okay.
And then it was in Arizona. I'm from Arizona. It was in Arizona for quite some time. And then when we moved east, it came with us.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. So let's see in here Eric goes on to say that he had the same problem as Fred with the rod bearings. And he says he checked the timing chain. It had some slack, but it turned out to be the bearings. So the engine had to come out. So, yeah. All right, next one up here, we got Jim K with a 79 MGB LE Stromberg carburetor. When driving for a while, there's no problem at all. Engine's warm, you shut it down, leave it for about 15 minutes, and you start the engine and it runs. You drive it about 300 yards and it shuts down. And you have to let it cool down for 30 minutes. And then it'll start and run perfectly, driving me crazy. Okay, so Jim, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm on.
Okay, so the first step, always, this cheapest, simplest, stupidest, easiest stuff first. You take the line that comes off the rear of the Stromberg and goes over to that steel line that goes across the back of the valve cover to the charcoal canister, and just pull that loose. Just pull it loose and let it run without that connected. Don't plug anything, just open it up and see if it makes one iota of difference. It shouldn't. If it does, it means there's something going on with the charcoal canister. So that I can't quite get there with this going on. Sounds more like it's heat related to me, but always do the canister trick first, because it's just so easy to do. So the normal complaint is that when you shut it down for 10 or 15 minutes, Not 5, you can get right back in, it runs okay, and not after 30, because then it's cooled down. But that 10 to 15 minutes or so, about the time it takes you to go in the party store and get some adult beverages and come back out. Usually the complaint is it won't start. Because the gasoline is boiling. But why it shuts down, I don't know.
That's a strange thing. I mean, and you drive it and it drives fantastic. And then you sit there and you just start, like you say, you stop in the party store for about 10 minutes. You get something, you come out, you start it up, right? It starts up fine, right? And I've even sat there, okay, and let it run, all right? And then all of a sudden I get about 300 yards down the road, boom, and I mean, it's just like, it just shuts down. There's like no gas. And I have talked, some people have told me, oh, it's the coil. And take a cold rag, all right?
Okay.
I put like an ice bucket in my car and I put a rag in there. And then when it happened, I took that rag and I got it ice cold and then I wringed it out and I wrapped it around the coil, right? Let it sit there for about 2-3 minutes. It still wouldn't start. I turned around and I took it and they said, put it on the carburetor, because the carburetor, they said the catalytic converter is right below the carburetor and it generates that heat up. And they said, take and put the rag on the carburetor. I let the carburetor cool down for about 5 minutes. It still wouldn't start. I took everything off and then all of a sudden, wait 20-25 minutes, thing fires up and it purrs like a kitten.
Talk about your ignition system. Do you have stock ignition?
Yes, it's a stock ignition. I mean, somebody was telling me, and they were saying about the distributor. They said in the 79, and I seen something in the Moss catalog that they say that the original distributor had problems. And because I think it was, I'm not sure, they had something about electrics. And they said, you might have to change the distributor out. And I was like,
do you have a black box underneath the ignition coil?
There is a black box there.
Okay, about twice the size of a pack of cigarettes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's the better ignition system. And offhand, those don't fail. I mean, anything fails, everything fails. But offhand, those are really good systems, and they're still working. I can't help but think that it's something more fuel related.
But check for spark when the problem happens.
I had problems like that with my ignition relay.
With the ignition relay?
Why, after you're stopping for 10 minutes, and then why does it run for 300 yards and then kill? But if you lose the ignition relay, then you lose your turn signals.
Now that I haven't checked my turn signals.
Another thing to look at is when it fails, as though you got time on your hands to be paying attention to anything besides getting the car over to the side. But if you do take it out for a drive again, at the instant it fails, if it's a primary side of the ignition, which we're all expecting it's not, the tachometer will fall instantly to 0, just as though that you turn the engine off. If on the other hand, you're slowing down, and the engine's still turning, but it's not under power, but it's still turning, then the tach will slowly come back down. But if it shuts off all at once.
No, it seems like the tach goes down slowly. I mean, it's just like you took the power away from it and it slowly goes down.
Yeah.
And here, the strange thing about it is, it always happens when my wife is in the car.
Well, Doc,
And so here we are out on a nice country road, cruising around, and we stop in, to get something and whatnot. I start it up, I take off. I'm about 300 yards down, and then all of a sudden it stalls, and all my wife does is look over at me and said, why did you buy this?
Disconnect that vent that goes over the charcoal canister and try it. You know, we got, you know, it's like, you know, Fred wants you to check the spark. You know, and it may be that that's it, but why in that circumstance? Why when it gets, you know, it gets really hot? Something's
My
happening?
guess is it's a needle valve in the float bowl issue, or just a float issue in general.
Could be.
I don't know why it would happen when it's hot. I had that issue with my midget with the Stromberg.
I can't read it.
Yeah, I would drive away
I'm
and I would
gonna-
get like 300 yards from the house and it would.
Mike, you're gonna have, Mike, Massachusetts, unmute yourself again. I had to hit.
Oh,
the-
I'm sorry.
No.
I would drive like 300 yards from the house and the car would die and I would take the air cleaner off and the gas coming out of the carb out of the intake, and it was the needle valve. It was just sticking
Okay.
and flooding, but it would only happen exactly like 300 yards from the house, like you said.
So anyway, you always do the cheapest, easiest stuff first. So just start experimenting, you know, the car will not run without an air cleaner on it. It won't run over 3,500 RPM without the air cleaner on it. But you got oil in the carburetor, right? Jim, you got oil in the carburetor?
Oh, he's muted.
Unmute yourself, Jim.
There we go.
There's oil in the carburetor.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, hey, I'm real fascinated. So try that trick I suggested, and then give me a call later on, and just I'll talk to you some more about it. This is a good one.
I mean, I've been looking over your YouTube videos and whatnot, looking for things. I've been looking, you know, all over YouTube to see if somebody can drive me in something, but it's very frustrating. I mean, I'm running high test
Oh,
gas.
yeah, I understand. I understand. I had a guy, I think I mentioned this last time we were on. I had a guy from Chicago, Pat Amarina. When he took a left-hand turn in his brand new Inca yellow, couldn't have been an 80 because that'd be Snapdragon, but 79B, you take it like a left-hand turn, the car would kill. It restart, run perfectly till he took a sharp left turn and kill. Start right back up again. You know, what's going on? And it had to do with some fluid that got into the hose that comes off the bottom of the anti-run-on valve and goes down underneath the ignition coil and then back up through the radiator diaphragm. And there's just a little bit of fluid sitting in there, and that would splash into a certain place and plug up that tube on a left-hand turn, and then the anti-run-on system was effectively engaged, and it killed his car. So that's why I'm asking you to remove that line to the charcoal canister. That gets rid of all the evaporative loss stuff right there. You know, so it's either involved in that or not. You'll find out real quickly. When you're, well, wait, it only happens when your wife's in the car, so you gotta, oh man, this is frustrating. You're gonna have to get her mad. Stop and get flowers first.
Instead of the butler, it was the wife that did it.
Okay, well,
thank
hey,
you, John.
Jim,
I'll sit there. You say the line from the right-hand side on the back of the car.
yeah, top right side, it connects to a 5/16 line that goes over the back of the top of the engine and goes over to the charcoal canister. Just pull it apart there. Just
John?
Sandy.
If I may, if I may, with the charcoal canister, when you're talking about the odor from the car when you pull it in after you're driving it, would that cause the noxious odor as well, the gas odor?
Well, that would smell like gasoline. And Drake was talking about a noxious odor, and that's probably because it's running and the CO meter goes off. So it sounds more to me like it's running too rich.
And that would cause, that would,
If the charcoal canister, if the carburetor overflows, it'll overflow into the charcoal canister. And then depending on how good the system is, the system's really good, it should kill the car. But if it doesn't, it'll end up dribbling out on the ground. More commonly, there are breaks in the line in the trunk. There are breaks in the line from the fuel tank up to the condensing canister inside the rear fender, and from that back down, those lines crack, and then the engine ventilates into the trunk, and all that gasoline smell wafts forward. So that's a real common problem there. But anyway, Jim, give me, where are you calling from, Jim?
I'm calling from Amherst, Ohio.
Oh, all right, okay, all right.
At Emerald Necklace.
Hey, great.
Going to be out there.
See you next, see you this coming Friday.
I wish I could be, but I'm going to be traveling.
And you don't dare bring your MG, right? Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Hey, thanks,
Janet and Reg, a 58 MGA runs so much better with new Firestones. No more jumping around with 50-year-old tires. Well, yeah. So Firestones. Are you still on, Reg?
Yeah, I am, John.
Okay.
Just a couple of weeks ago, I talked to you about it. It was hard to get the tires and all that, got them out of Mexico. World of difference. I mean, I know I'd never drive it with 50-year-old tires anywhere, but
yeah,
lots of tread, but no more bounce and skids every time you hit a little ripple. So just a note, great to have new tires. That's all for everyone.
Wonderful. Well, but you got radials now. You had bias ply before?
Well, that's the car that was 40 years in the box. It had kind of 4 types of tires on it.
Okay.
Soup to nuts. So yeah, but it does have, so it went 165, 75, 50.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. Really nice, and Speedway Motors really reasonable, $120.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. So little plug. Thanks.
Thank you. So Mike from Massachusetts weighed back in for the Stromberg carb. My guess is the float needle issue. I had a similar issue on my midget with a Zenith Stromberg. So that, yep, could be. Paul, I wanted to call you the other day, but I couldn't find your phone number. So my phone number, Paul, is 616. It should be on my website. Should be. I'll look at that real heavily tomorrow morning. It should be, my phone number is 616, because I'm in Western Michigan. That's 616-307-6737. You ought to be able to find that on the web pretty easily. I'm not secret about my phone number. It's nice if you can call between 1 and 2. I'm going to be busy tomorrow morning. That's for sure, because I'm working on the website. So, and then Ann Harris has weighed in. Try the, it looks like a typo. Fuse. Okay. All right. That was from a long time ago. Phil Cooper, first time on Zoom. I have to say that I'm loving the conversation and the different fixes to the different issues, like doctors practicing medicine. We're all practicing MG here, right? Keeping our English cars running is always a challenge, but like many of us, I enjoy tinkering with my 58 MGA. Good for you. Thank you for your videos and for your help keep me on the road. That's real nice. Well, here Marty, my administrative assistant, has put my phone number in the chat section here. Thank you, Marty. Paul, when making a toe-in adjustment, do you need to adjust both tie rod ends, or can you do just one? That's a 74 MGB. Paul, are you on? Well, I'm going to start to answer it, and if Paul's on, he can unmute himself. Anyway, there's three factors, right? There's a caster, camber, and finally toe in, right? Toe in. And if you if you're towed in too much, and nominally on bias ply tires, the toe in is anywhere from about a 1/16 of an inch towed in to 0. Radial tires don't take much of a toe in at all, if at all. If you're, for instance, if you're towed in and you've got to tow something out and you tow this one out so that the effect is that they're both straight, then the steering wheel is going to change its position, right?
But couldn't you then you just pop the steering wheel off, straight steering wheel?
Well, it's easier just to do it from underneath. So if you turn them both the same amount, then the wheel's going to stay in the same position. If the wheel is rotated less than one spline, then you, when you're all done and you're straight ahead and your steering wheel's off by a tiny little amount and it drives you crazy and you want to have it right, then you tow one side in and one side out the same amount.
Right.
When you're doing a tow in, you push the car ahead a dozen feet at least, check the toe in, make your adjustment, back it up, bring it ahead again. Now, I had a guy tell me one time, he says, if you take half a dozen or a dozen pieces of wax paper and put them on top of each other, then the tire will slip on the wax paper and you don't have to roll it back and forth. That sounds cool. And if you're really cool, you've got the adjustable pans underneath it, so that the wheel turns right there. But the real proof is going out and driving the car when you're all done. And if the wheel's off just a little bit, just adjust one side in and one side out. Sometimes you don't know where they are to start with. We had when my shop was on Patterson Avenue, we got a. Oh, Kurt, you're not on tonight. What did we have in? What came in? It wasn't a Mini. Maybe it was a Mini. And one side was turned in like, I don't know, 30 turns, and the other side was turned in 1.5 turns. Whoa, whoa! You want them both pretty close to being equal. Don't have to be equal, but a lot closer than 30 and 1.5. So anyway, just make those changes in the end. And you really have to go, you can't do it, you can't just look in the garage and go, well, I think that's straight. You got to go out and actually drive it. So where are you calling from, Paul?
Rochester, New York.
Okay, all right.
Christmas party.
Yes, I'm going to be there. I'm on December 9th or December something. Yep, I am. I'm going to be at your Christmas party. So great.
Yes, thank you very much.
John, Bruce McMillan here, if you can hear me.
Yeah, Bruce.
I've got 30 threads out on one side and 10 out or in on the other. Same thing you're doing. The steering is straight and the car tracks. I'm going through this car and that doesn't quite sound right.
No, I get them I get them closer, but in the end, that means that you got to then readjust the toe in, and when the toe in is correct, then the steering wheel is at like 4 o'clock or something crazy. You got to pop the wheel off, go out on the road, put it on, go out and drive it, and get it as close as you can to 12 o'clock. And then by moving it one spline at a time, I mean, the wisest thing to do is pull over and pull the wheel off and turn it to spline rather than doing it on the road. I had a mechanic do that on the road one time with a young guy in the passenger side, and they got so close to sideswiping some cars because he couldn't get the wheel back on. But why would you take the steering wheel off while you're driving? Anyway, and then make that final adjustment, by moving one side out, one side in. But just accept the fact that you've got to reposition the wheel. And it may be that it's off that much because someone wanted to get the wheel straight in the beginning and they didn't know how to pop it off, or they hadn't popped it off, or maybe they had the steering column loose from the U joint, or I mean, there's 1,000 reasons why it might have occurred.
Okay, well, I do appreciate that. I've got a good wheel alignment guy up here.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And I mean, he's the guru of wheel alignments in 3 counties. And so I've got a scrub from one of the tie rod ends on a magnesium alloy wheel. So something's going on there, and I've not really gotten down into the suspension yet. It popped off the magnesium alloy wheels have weights on the inside, and it popped the weight off and scrubbed down in that area.
There's a couple
standard road style wheels work fine.
So if you're married to the aftermarket wheels, and why wouldn't you be? You can argue they're more attractive, and they're straighter probably at this time. You can either take a grinder and grind a little tiny, because you can see right on the tie rod end where it's hitting. I mean, you don't want to hit it too hard. You don't want to weaken it, but if it's just an occasional rub or something, you can do that. The other possibility is that the steering arm itself is bent. That's a heavy duty cast iron piece. And every time we're on, I always give out Paul Deershaw's name in Arvada, Colorado. It's Sports Car Craftsman, but you can contact Paul Deershaw at Sports Car Craftsman and get another steering arm, and maybe it's incrementally bent towards the center of the car, and the tie rod end then won't hit the wheel, or maybe it'll be worse. You don't know. So.
Anyway, thank you very much. But yeah, my original thought was just take the tie rod and break them free, take them off, line them up by eyeball, and have my man work at them.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the help.
Okie doke. I got a nice video up about how to pop the steering wheel off too. That's my #1 video, 001, first one I did. For Mark Mauser, took the steering wheel off his midget. So
would that work on the 79 body?
Yeah, absolutely. Same. It's a two-person job. Look at the video, follow the instructions, comes right off, no problem. Okay, but you gotta follow the instructions, and it's 2 people. Absolutely. All right. So Bruce, where are you from?
Same place I told you before, northern neck of Virginia, down somewhere between the Potomac River and the Rappahannock River on the Chesapeake Bay.
All right. Okay. All right. You
Thanks a lot.
gonna be at the Hunt Country Classic then?
No, the MT isn't running, and they want me to come up and help.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
that's 4 hours away.
Oh my gosh. All right. Okay.
But anyway, if I do, look forward to it. Thank you.
All right. Ben Andrews, can you give us a quick refresher on the proper wire wheel knockoff tightening? Oh, so I was stuck new knockoff, and I'm going to try the heat gun method before ruining the nut. Well, that's interesting. I haven't seen the spinners stuck on, Ben, or the wheel stuck on? Ben, I know you're out there. So anyway,
Yeah, the spinner's stuck.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty bizarre. I mean, there's 2 types of hammers, 3 types of hammers you can use. Lead hammer, right? And the whole idea is it's softer than the spinner, so that's going to deform before the spinner does. A brass hammer, which is like the same material as the hammer or as the spinner, and you're going to do some damage to it. I've got a big dead blow hammer with shot on the inside of it with a plastic end on it. But I bet you're going to have to do some heating or something. I can't believe it's that tight. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm just looking for going back in. What's the right way to tighten it?
Just snug it up. until, bam, 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 until it quits turning, and so what does that mean?
But it's still up in the air, right?
Yeah, you just spin it, and well, if it's on the ground and you're hitting it, all of a sudden you got some angle that you can't hit, So if it's up in the air, yeah, I mean, if you continued to hit it as hard as you could, you'd move it that far each time, but the spinners tighten themselves. So if you just put them on snug, they tighten up by themselves. It's real weird how it works, but
Right. And for Bruce with his steering wheel,
yeah,
with a late model, he's lucky, right? Because your canceller, you can move it so his turn signal canceller turns out where he needs it to be. Is that
well,
true? Or?
the canceller moves 68 through 76, and then 77 through 80, you can either have the canceller this way or this way, and if you have it the wrong way, it doesn't cancel until you go through about 270 degrees of wheel movement. It's to set the turn signal switches up so they'll work left or right hand drive.
Gotcha.
But yeah, and George Barberi, he knows how much trouble there is getting the steering wheel off. Oh my gosh. We did that up in Canada on his car. It was a task. That's probably where I lost my brass hammer. See, so okay, Jim K signed in late tonight. Did you say anything about the gearbox seminar in Hollywood, South Carolina? I really want to attend. So I've only said that it's there. It's at Carl Ware's house, and I have yet to contact Carl and get some more information about it. But Jim, if you want to know something, send me a note, and I'll get you in touch with Carl so we can get this all set up.
Okay, I got Carl's number. I met
okay.
Carl once before at our car club, but I didn't know if it was already set up. Or I tried calling him today and no answer on the house phone. Cell phones inbox is full.
And the mailbox has been full for a year. Yeah, yeah. I appreciate. I appreciate that. So anyway, but I'm planning to be down there that weekend. So I'm not. I think I told him that's the weekend. He always says, "Oh, don't make no difference. Come on down anytime," But obviously, other people have to find out, make plans for it. So,
right.
Okie doke.
Okay.
Look forward
Thank
to seeing you down there.
I'll be there.
Mr. Hurston, regrettably, I had to join the conversation late. Any idea when it will be posted to YouTube? Oh, well, Marty will bug me tomorrow morning and make me put it up tomorrow night, probably. So soon.
Thanks much.
Yeah. Jeff Langenay. I have a 66B Roadster that I've owned since the early 80s. Congratulations. I rebuilt the transmission at your technical seminar in the winter of 2012. My tachometer seems to be showing about twice the actual RPM. It actually serves more as an approximate speedo, because if I'm going 55 miles per hour, the tach will show around 5,500 RPM. So Jeff, are you still on? Are you hung out here? We're over our 9 o'clock time, but Jeff, are you still on?
On. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm on.
Yeah, okay, 2012, huh? Those are the fun days. Oh my gosh. So, do you have electronic ignition in your car, Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, is the tach changed reading since you put that electronic ignition in?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Electronic ignition, no, it has the original ignition.
Points. Okay.
Correct.
All right. So there is a potentiometer on the inside of the tach itself. But I don't think this is going to do it. I think there's a failure of some some component in the electrics there. There's resistors and capacitors and a printed circuit. It looks like the inside of this $6 million man when you take it apart, made by Texas Instruments. You can take the tach out when you're not driving it and then send it to, I always used to send everybody to Nicenger, but they don't, they're done. Send it to West Valley Instruments in the greater San Francisco area, Morris at West Valley Instruments, and they can either repair what's in there now or replace what's in there now with some other guts. How would you ever know? But that might require a slightly different wiring or something. So anyway, that's the way. But if you do take it apart, then you got to hook all the wires back up and the impulse loop back up, and you're holding it in your hand. And there's a little screw in the back, little potentiometer. You crank it back and forth to get it to scrape away all the oxidation and stuff. And then you need a tach dwell so you know how fast you are going, and bring the engine up to maybe $3,000 and match it there. But when it's off by double, that's a lot to account for. But there is a potentiometer for dialing it in correctly. I don't know if you can get that much distance out of it or not.
Thank you. That's helpful. I appreciate it.
Okay. Where are you calling from?
I'm in Montana.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Hey,
All
John.
right.
John, West Valley is in Reseda, California, Los Angeles area.
Oh, it's in Los Angeles. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Reseda. I'll try to burn that into my little pea brain.
Here
So,
in San Fernando Valley.
okay. All right. And here we got a suggestion of the engine cutting out to try the fuel filter, but I don't, just offhand, I doubt it's the fuel filter, but you always try the cheapest, easiest, simplest stuff first. So we've run through the whole chat section here. Let me make another pitch. I was going to make a pitch at 8 o'clock and I forgot all about it because I get so excited. How can you tell? About going to my website and finding the PayPal button and pressing the PayPal button and making a contribution. We'll be thanking people on the website. That's one of the new pages that we want to have on there to thank people for their contributions and helping out and so forth, because I do this all the time. I go to lots of events and lots of places, and I get paid sometimes to go places to be the featured speaker and the guy from out of town, because he's always the expert. And sometimes I go places where I don't get paid, but it all works, and I appreciate the support that I get from this community a lot. So thank you very, very kindly. So that's about it. I'm going to Rochester. I had my calendar. I was talking about, I don't have my calendar out right now. I don't remember when Rochester is, but the Western New York MG Car Club, originally run for years and years and years by George Herschel, the late George Herschel, is having their Christmas party in early December, and I am the featured speaker there. So I'll be going out to Rochester. Just in Syracuse, not too long ago, April, for Kimberfest, I wanted to go see the Erie Canal, and they have the best Erie Canal Museum in Syracuse. My triple great grandfather was the chief construction engineer of the Erie Canal. He's named up as the father of the American Society of Civil Engineers. They cut that thing, hundreds of miles long. It's like, okay, I get that part of it, but how do you put a canal like over a river or something? I mean, it's just amazing. It's just amazing that they got that all done, 1825, So anyway, I'll be in Rochester, Xerox and Kodak. That's what's there. Although help me out. That's where Genesee beer is too, right? The Genesee River flows from south to north, one of the few rivers that does that. So anyway, if we got anything else here, Leland Drum, thank you very kindly for your comment there at the end here. And if anybody's got any questions, you can call me. I've already put my my number in the chat section there. You can find it on the website. I think you should be able to. As soon as we get the new website up and going, it'll all be there all the time. And I appreciate your support. Drive your MGs, keep them on the road. Everyone's so nice. Gosh, you know, no matter where you go, there's MG owners everywhere. And they'll all extend a helping hand and be kind, and it's a good group. So thanks.
You know, about that, John, you know, we just drove 6,000 miles, did not see one MG. We used to see one or two. They're
Oh my
getting
God.
more and more rare, and people gather around the car wherever we stop. And of course, younger ones say, "What is that?"
What is that?
Yeah,
It's an MG. Oh, you mean a GM?
yeah,
No.
exactly.
No.
But we had an interesting experience. Before we went into Wind River Canyon, my cruise control stopped working. So I pull over the side and pop the hood. Gloria said, "I'll look for wires." Well, the chain came off. So I get out and I'm fixing it. A Ranger pulls up, an older guy with a big mustache. He pulls up and asks us if we need help. I told him what was going on. He said, "Okay, well, I can leave you." And just then a young guy pulls up to see if he could help. And the Ranger looked at me and says, "I don't know this guy. I'm going to stay with you until he leaves." So the result of all that was that he was all alone, this Ranger. So we were protected by the Lone Ranger.
No.
Okay.
I'm out of here.
Okay. All right. Very cool.
Say, John, this is Doug. It was almost 20 years ago. When I got my first MG, I went to the Secretary of State's office to register it, and I filled out the form, and the person behind this is 20 years ago now, and the person behind the counter said, "What kind of car is this? MG? You mean it's a GM?" I said, "No." And she's thinking, what, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Buick, or what? No, this is 20 years ago. So, so anyway, it can happen. The MG, GM for people who are a little dyslexics, maybe, but so it happened to me at the Secretary of State's office a long time ago.
Hey, and all that stuff happens everywhere. I sent somebody down to the post office, and they brought the letter back as it was addressed to South Africa, and they said, "Well, they need a country." I said, "Well, there's always the good stories." Yeah, when my daughter drove another, not to be the GT that she has now, but another one. She had it in Ann Arbor, Michigan for a summer. And she said every time she stopped to get gas, people would come around and it's like, "Oh yeah, my babysitter's boyfriend's first cousin's ex-wife had one of these." And, everybody had a story, or it's like, "What's that?" And or what the T-typers used to get, they're filling up and somebody come up and say, Is that one of them kit cars?
Yeah.
Oh, it's like, nope.
The other question you get is, "Well, who makes MG?" I say, "Well, nobody now." But one young girl said, "Do you mind if I ask you?" It was in a food place. She said, "Mind if I ask you what car that is?" I said, "Yeah, I do mind." And then I laughed and I said, No. I told her it's an MG, and she looked at me with a puzzled look. I said, "Well, they stopped making those long before you were born."
That's right.
So she laughed. But yeah, everywhere you go, people, it's an unusual looking car compared to modern cars, and people are just impressed, and they think it's a modern car. So yeah, we had a lot of fun. But I usually see one or two British cars, but not one. Well, some new Jaguars, which were fun to look at, but that's it. We had no problem whatsoever, other than that cruise control.
So go to England, go drive around England. There aren't any British cars.
Yeah,
You
yeah, a
know?
lot of Japanese cars are big.
Oh,
in it.
yeah, or French or German or, yeah, it just, it's all, everything, if age teaches you nothing else, is that everything changes.
Yeah.
Excuse me, John.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask, at one point Greg Fisher was away from the screen, but somebody had asked us, Greg's back now, the color, and I don't know if that person's still on, but they wanted to
yeah.
know the color of your bee.
Pageant blue.
Pageant blue.
Pageant blue, that's a factory color.
Yep.
Yep. First of
So-
all, it's Tahiti blue. That was 75, 76, right? Maybe?
Yep.
And then they went to pageant blue.
Well, glacier blue behind me on the A,
Yep.
but thank you.
In the meantime, between those two, that same lighter, I mean, you can argue all day those are not the same blues, but then you go to iris blue, and I just drove a TD this weekend for a guy who painted it. I said, what color is this? And he said, pale primrose. And I thought, well, okay, all right. It's like, it seems like it's a little lighter than the original pale primrose, but that was a pale yellow. So.
Oops.
Oh, what did I do with my view here?
Oh, you're back.
Just came back.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm probably beyond, I don't know if they time me or what, but we're at 2 minutes or 2 hours and 20 minutes here. So anyway, hey, it's been a lot of fun. Doug, are you still on? What was our official count tonight, Doug?
Oh, I sent you a note a few minutes ago, but it was, I think it was, I said it was 132, I think it was.
Okay, all right.
132.
All right. We didn't have anybody from a long way away. I got to make my my constant contacts emails more exciting, I guess. So.
Anybody going to the MGs on the Rocks Saturday? Just north of Baltimore. A nice little show. And apparently no one's going.
No takers. Jim Pastor.
I think I'm gonna get, I think I'm heading down there.
Yeah. Okay.
Tim Pastor, yep.
I'm near there, but I don't have time.
I'm gonna be in Cleveland.
Going to be there Sunday?
Where, in Cleveland?
Yeah.
Well, I'll be coming home Sunday. Probably.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't even know what I haven't even looked at the schedule yet. They got a Natter Noggin on Friday night, and then they must have a dinner or something on Saturday night. So.
Okay, we'll be leaving Friday for Baltimore, so.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know you were coming down, and we
Hey, that's okay. I got to see it at Jim's show, so.
Yeah.
All right, ladies
that
and
was
gentlemen, thank you very kindly. It's been a real pleasure. I'm gonna sign off.
Right,
And,
John.
look forward to seeing you on, when I wrote it down. What day are we doing it next? I didn't write it down. I'll let you know. See ya.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. Good night. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you, Don. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Keep them upright.